Greetings Garrett fans, I'm Eurogamer's YouTube editor Ian Higton. It's been 10 years since Thief Deadly Shadows, and the announcement that Eidos Montreal were working on a new Thief game has made a lot of gamers very excited. The new title reboots and reimagines the series, but will it alienate fans of the original? Paul Dean sneaked into a preview event to try the game out for himself, and like a true thief, I stole all the gameplay footage he brought back, yoinked his notes off his desk and used them to create this video preview. Stealing things is so much easier than doing proper work. Thief is going to be different. Of course, the series is being rebooted and reimagined after 10 years in the shadows, so it's bound to step forward cloaked in a very different mantle, and it's unreasonable not to expect some substantial changes. Nevertheless, pull that hood back and you may not recognise the face that stares back. The premise remains the same: tread lightly where you should not, footsteps guided by the wavering tip of a long demagnetised moral compass, filling your pockets along the way. With a sack full of specialised tools to aid in evasion and escape, Garrett the Thief is a kleptomaniac Batman, flitting through the darkness or dashing across rooftops, occasionally taking pause to mutter in gravelly tones before prising open another window or rooting around in another sock drawer. The city across which he sneaks is familiar at first, a misaligned mess of overcrowding, too dense and too dirty, but this time it has many more mod cons and is a little more conventional. Replacing the unsettling buzz of strange pseudo-electric street lamps are rather more typical lights, while it's not uncommon to see a radiator tucked into a corner or a fan perched upon a desk. Playing through the first two chapters, there is a sense of a more Victorian atmosphere, but there's still space made for the unnatural, for esoteric cults, for those strange murmurs in the dark. There's a lot more detail in this new city, a lot more to do, and certainly a lot more to touch. The game opens with you, playing as Master Thief Garrett, stood over a sleeping man in a plush, comfy bedroom, and within moments you're throwing open cupboards, searching through desks and clearing shelves. You can take his cutlery, you can take his money, you can take a lot of cheap items of no particular consequence, just for the fun of it. From another room nearby you can also find and take the first of many pairs of scissors that you'll find scattered throughout the opening levels. There are a lot of scissors to find in Thief, hidden in a lot of different places. Once you climb out of the bedroom window onto the roof, you get a feel of how Garrett moves, sometimes sprinting, almost free-running. With a tap of the X button, Garrett can now make short dashes from shadow to shadow, while the left trigger works as a leap or grab button, launching the thief across gaps, up handholds, or ahead onto dangling ropes. In combination, these make for some rapid escapes, or some quick and surprisingly, and even generously, silent progress. There's a lot to grab onto, leap over, or climb up. Further tactility comes from painting searching and lockpicking. The first involves grasping the frame of a painting that Garrett knows is suspect and then feeling around it for a telltale vibration that will indicate a secret switch. Lockpicking is also a palm tickler, where rotating both sticks will find you a sweet spot that gives a gentle rumble. All this makes Thief sound like a game that's absolutely packed with stuff to try, and yes, the levels Paul played with were full of things to open, to rifle through or to leap onto, but this wasn't necessarily very compelling, and according to him it started to become rather routine. Instead, in spite of all that there is to reach out and touch, the overwhelming first impression of Thief is of a game that is narrow both in layout and in choices. It's almost too good at representing the cramped confines of its city.
Few guards, residents upstairs. Stealing the mask shouldn't be a problem.
The opening was a tutorial, a gradual, linear and didactic introduction to Garrett's talents, but what came next didn't appear that much broader. Subsequent areas felt like corridors and small rooms. Streets were tight and winding without the possibilities that greater space might be present, while the opening interiors were low and cramped. There wasn't a sense of choice, of alternative routes. When Paul made his way into a foundry through what looked to be the game's first major location, he wasn't presented with a large building that might offer multiple routes of entry depending on the tools he used, but instead he found himself first navigating through a distinct entrance area before then moving through different parts of the interior one after another in a manner that felt much more guided and at times even dictated. For example, at one point a climb up an outside wall had the camera switch to a third-person view, with the route he needed to take subtly highlighted in blue. It was almost impossible to fall, and when he tried avoiding the window entry to which this route led, instead trying a short drop to the ground to see if he could scuttle up a nearby alleyway, the game immediately told him he was dead. He didn't even get to see how this might have happened. Perhaps the designers didn't want anyone to miss the exposition that waits around every corner. While the previous Thief games always had the occasional overheard conversation or discarded scrap of information, this one certainly doesn't lack dialogue. As well as the occasional in-game cutscenes, there are plenty of loquacious guards to listen to, and this new incarnation of Garrett isn't exactly lost for words either.
They've been burning the bodies in the open air.
How terrible.
Thief likes you to know that things are going on as it takes you from place to place, feeding you fresh plot points all the time. A more directed Thief game isn't necessarily a worse one, but a less deadly one is out of character, and as Paul tiptoed through all these conversations, peeked into more drawers or stole away more scissors, it seems he rarely felt any sense of peril. While stepping on broken glass turned some heads in his direction, he didn't find himself very troubled by those whose job it was to keep him at bay.
His work's subtle. Seems I'm not the only one making a house call tonight.
Even though he was trying the game's medium difficulty level, he was only spotted at his most careless, and he found it difficult to make much noise. He was seen and not heard. There were a few moments of fear. For instance, a fumble while picking a lock momentarily woke a guard who was asleep, though he immediately went back to dozing. Unfortunately, when the alarm finally was raised, even the ensuing fight was of little consequence. When lone guards came at Paul with arms and anger, it only took a moment to bring them down with a blackjack, hammering them until the camera cut to a third-person view to show off a dramatic finishing move. Multiple guards were much more of a problem, a proper threat, but given that nobody in the next room or corridor even came running in response to any noises made, this wasn't something that warranted much worry. Suddenly, being a stealthy thief wasn't so much of a priority. Let me repeat that Paul was playing this on the game's medium difficulty setting, and he wasn't even using any of Garrett's new focus powers either. These optional enhancements, which can be disabled through custom difficulty settings, will give you an increased advantage by improving his vision or enhancing his thieving skills. From the preview, it's unsure whether Thief is going to be a game about subtlety, or even one that will need such a careful ear. It feels faster and fiercer, but also smaller, something that could appeal to the more action-oriented players, and which isn't likely to sit comfortably with fans of the old series. That doesn't mean that it can't succeed on its own merits, but it doesn't give the impression of a game that presents the freedom of its forefathers. It's a very different creation, but then it's separated from those predecessors by a substantial span of time. What a difference a decade makes. Thanks for watching, guys. If you want to check out Paul's written preview, head over to Eurogamer.net right now to check it out. There's a link in the description. Oh, and make sure to subscribe to the channel for more Thief coverage and tons of other cool stuff in the near future. If you don't, I'll come round your house and nick all your scissors, and then how are you going to make snowflakes out of paper, or wrap presents, or cut your own toenails and stuff?